Hidden in the midst of virgin beech forests and little known in general, peatland Chorne Bagno is only now revealing its secrets and importance for the climate and for human well-being, which is beyond being only local. Processes that take place in its depths and on the surface can play one of the key roles in saving atmosphere from the pollution.
This place is unique compared to other peatlands in Ukraine. It's a peatland, a bog on a mountain. It is depending on the precipitation which is falling, which is caught by this mountain in this national park. And that is a situation obviously unique for Ukraine, but it's pretty typical for the development of such a bog. We can even say this is a classical example, really from the book. The ideal prototype of a bog is that here, and from a scientific point of view, I think this place is very important and special for Ukraine.
Such tiny plants and peat mosses that grow in nutrient-poor and continuously wet environments are some of the most efficient absorbers of carbon from the air. Compared with forests, peatlands store more than twice as much carbon, although much smaller in size.
Oh, poor peatland. Ah, nice. Sponge. It can store the water, it can keep the water, and growing always on the top, this means how it grows higher and higher and higher over thousands of years. So this is our main player here, the small peat moss. Some scientists say it's one of the most important plants in the world because such peatlands can take a lot of carbon from the air and store it for thousands and thousands of years. So they are really important for our climates, the peatlands.
Under permanently waterlogged conditions, these specific plants can grow continuously, while the layers below are not decayed and form peat layer by layer. With the help of the sun, they catch the carbon from the atmosphere and store it in the peat year by year, and collect the carbon from the air, like water is collected by a sponge.
The peatland is constantly growing, so it's growing every year and it's accumulating carbon inside the peat. And this is a valuable interaction with the atmosphere because it constantly takes CO2 from the atmosphere and stores it in the peatland.
Despite the size of Chorne Bagno, the area of which was increased from 15 to 20 hectares, within the framework of the project Restoration of Peatlands in Transkarpatia, it is still quite sensitive to changes. The unique ecosystem and hydrological balance, which have been established here for centuries, have been significantly affected by human the last 50 years. Attempts were made to drain the peatland. Ditches were cut into the soil, bleeding out the landscape and releasing much of the stored carbon into the atmosphere.
На превеликий жаль, в радянські часи болотиста місцевість з ціллю розширення мережі сільськогосподарських угідь піддавалася усудженню. Були спеціальні підприємства, які займалися меліорацією, які на даний час привели до плачевних результатів. Надзвичайно важливо зберегти цей об'єкт як модель для подальшого відтворення боліт, будемо казати, в Карпатському регіоні, можливо, навіть і в Україні.
Nearly 10% of the peatlands in the world are degraded because we use them mostly for agriculture, sometimes for forestry. So we lower the water table, and then of course it is the opposite happening. So the whole peat is coming in contact with the air and it's going to the atmosphere as CO2, but also as agricultural products. The Ukraine is already one of the top 10 emitters when it comes to emissions from degraded peatlands.
Attempts to restore the peatland have been made before, in particular to stabilize the hydrological regime, and natural dynamics supported these plans. Beavers started to re-establish a population in the area and became unexpected allies, as their dams reduced the runoff of water from the peatland. The beavers' wetland engineering work was completed as part of this project. A detailed hydrological map of the Chorne Bagno was elaborated in order to have a solid planning foundation for the restoration measures.
Цього року ми також розпочали не тільки напрямок екоосвіти, але також і напрямок по відновленню екосистем, а якщо бути конкретнішими, то по відновленню боліт. Знайшлась можливість отримати грант від фундації VGP та реалізувати проєкт по відновленню болота Чорне Багно. Ми стараємось також працювати з місцевими експертами і також залучати тих людей, які вже досліджували болото і також проводили попередні проєкти для того, щоб зреалізувати вже наш проєкт краще.
Yeah, they are everywhere.
Цей проект є лише одним з етапів співпраці. В майбутньому планується проводити надалі моніторинг за тими процесами, які відбуваються після наших активностей по відновленню. І це дасть можливість нам краще зрозуміти, які позитивні наслідки мав наш проект.
With all the planning done, we are waiting for the first frost so as not to harm the vegetation and sensitive inhabitants of the peatland. The project has entered its active, practical implementation phase. For several days and nights, a specific lightweight excavator liquidated the drainage ditch, which was cut in the bog half a century ago and was almost 300 meters long. The ditch had caused a frequent loss of valuable water that will now remain in the peatland. It was necessary to translocate more than 1,500 cubic meters of soil to close the ditch. It will take some time for nature to heal the wounds caused by humans. Modeling results show that peat dome typical to natural peatlands will quickly recover, because from now on, the wound cannot continue to bleed on, and peat-forming vegetation will start with carbon absorption.
The only water which is providing, it's feeding this peatland, it's coming from the rain, and the rain does not have much nutrients. So when there are some species that can cope with the nutrient poor conditions, and that is the sundew. It has like sticky leaves, and it can catch insects and eat insects and help itself to feed itself.
Chorne Bagno plays an important role not only for climate crisis mitigation and nature conservation. The bog will also retain the water in the landscape, which is very important to prevent and decrease the intensity of floods, which have become more frequent, particularly in Transkarpatien.
Ефективне функціонування болота в його природньому стані, воно здатне поглинати надзвичайно багато вологи і утримувати її. Це свого роду губка, яка впитує надлишок вологи і не дає можливості ставатися надзвичайно катастрофічним паводкам.
This project also aims to work in the direct periphery of the peatland. In addition to the development and construction of a new tourist trial for ecological education, camping sites and an observation platform have been built. The constructions are made in a minimally invasive way, so as to reduce the impact on vegetation and soil. Everything is attached to geo-anchors. In the future, tourists will have the unique opportunity to explore the peatland and use a tent camp nearby. And thanks to the information boards, they can learn more about the features of Chorne Bagno. To fully experience and finally realize, people should take care of nature and in particular peatlands, which in return, silently and invisibly, save us from the climate crisis.